Smash 64's smorgasbord of a cast would have been crafted without a guideline. It wasn't flying completely blind thanks to inspirations of King of Fighters and the whole generation of Street Fighter 2 likes, but it was also having to evolve into its own niche. The conflict between being an IP fish that grew legs so that it could explore the lands of a new genre, and the predator that was Nintendo's established IP needing to feed off of its success would have created a development food chain that was unpredictable. There was no way to know if Mario could coexist with Link in a game that was fun, not to mention how blank canvases like Captain Falcon had to find their identity with the only direction being they do cars, but no cars. This likely put balance as a concept that was low on the priority list, with the negligence resulting in a clear strongest character, Pikachu. But Kirby was a close second. Finding himself brushing up against the best list after list, there was very little debate that Kirby was strong. In a cast of characters that couldn't figure out whether they should tie their shoelaces or attempt to eat them, Kirby's unimpressive but fundamentally solid moveset kept him close to the top at every skill level and eating shoelaces like a champ. Big hitboxes allowed him to control his space with ease, allowing him to hunker down, take his space, and make it a nightmare to contest it. Thanks to Smash 64's success, Nintendo was now fat with the finances of paying customers, so it was only natural that another Smash was on the way, one where Kirby would be trash. A lot of Melee's early tier lists, while maybe representative of the time, are definitely questionable in retrospect. Sheik is the best until 2005 seems egregious, until you notice that Pikachu was below Link, and Ice Climbers was neighboring the semi-detached with Zelda at house number 18. But even from the early 2000s crack pipe until now, people seem to agree Kirby is arse. Slaloming between the bottom 5 slots, he's undeniably bad. But when compared to the same Kirby 2 years ago, the downfall's been tragic enough to put him in an alcoholic PSA. If you look at these characters side by side though, at a basic level, very little has changed. 64's up air became Melee's nair, with Melee's up air being made from scratch. Now he's got the same diversification of throws that everyone else got. The moves that made him strong in 64, like up tilt and bear, are still here. But despite their similarities, the connection between these two characters is one of ontology, the same ancestor, but a different genus. Kirby in 64 is very complete. Every aerial he throws out has a real honkin' hog of a hitbox, shit looking like a can of monsters, bigger than my iPhone type beat, which when combined with 64's Z-cancel, which removes all aerial landing lag, sets up walls that are very hard to approach. That lets him set down a castle, or photon cannon, wherever he is, requiring the opponent to force Kirby out of his position. Ideally, that'd be nesting under a side platform that lets him cover multiple approaching options at once, or top platform that has bear and fair complemented by up tilt or dare. These moves could let Kirby play keep away, denying the opponent space in a very passive pattern of wait and see rejections, followed up by consistent punishes. The multi-hit of fair and dare often led to up tilt follow-ups, occasionally leading into fair extensions, but more often than not leading to bear and nair. It's not often that these outright killed, but that wasn't a problem. The real advantage of these moves was how consistently it put your opponent off stage, where Kirby's real kill potential kicked in. With 6 jumps, Kirby can trail you off stage and make it back without having to put themselves in too much risk. But when paired with down tilt, which is both disjointed and low hitting, he's always in a position to catch 2 or 3 different recovery options just by throwing out different hitboxes at the right time. This edgeguard potential, in a game where many characters' recovery is pretty poor, has him blast through almost the entire cast, with the notable exception being Pikachu, in part because that character's fast and diverse recovery makes Kirby unable to capitalize on their most lethal point of play. It's not the flashiest, but solid moves allow for a basic game plan of difficult to challenge defense that capitalizes on sloppy approaches, a pair of qualities that create a tight game plan. Melee Kirby, on the other hand, well, a wise man once said, preheat the oven to 200 degrees and cook for 20 to 25 minutes. Just because you know the saying doesn't mean you live by it.
Oh yeah, that seems about done.
Melee Kirby still needs some time in the oven. A lot of people will tell you that's because there's still plenty of raw dough and how it shouldn't have bugs in it, though I think that's just the immediately bitter taste the character leaves in your mouth, when the real problem is the salmonella that's crawling all over it. Take Bear for example. In 64 this is a strong walling attack. Its size makes it hard to challenge, and Z-cancels make it hard to bait and punish. In Melee, it's still decently sized, but look at those little piggies sticking out. That extended hurt box doesn't make the move useless, but it nudges the attack's quality down. Characters now have a much greater opportunity to trade with it, and characters with particularly disjointed attacks are able to challenge it directly. Then consider that Z cancels don't exist here. You have L cancels, which only remove half of the typical delay. By itself that has very little impact, but when mixed with the system changes present some problems. Movement in 64 has to be very deliberate. Once you start going forward, there's no way to quickly move in and out of the space. You're either going to stop or jump away, especially since shielding as an option carries a lot of risk thanks to the extended shield stun and hit stun. Grounded movement in melee on the other hand is a lot more fluid. If 64 moves like KOF, then melee moves like Marvel. The movement isn't devoid of the concept of commitment, but its flexibility doesn't let someone just throw out a normal and control a bunch of the screen for free. You have to spend a barometer first. Dash dancing and wave dashing lets characters move with less commitment, making a button that's strength is controlling a large set position weaker, since face rolling the grey stick right at the opponent can now be corrected before you're punished. That'd make the move weaker, but it doesn't make the move inherently bad. Puff's been terrorizing the Mind Palace of Smashers for years with a move that occupies the exact same idea. The difference there though comes back to movement. Puff has a lot of aerial drift, letting her dip in and out of space while she's in the air, while Kirby has such little horizontal mobility that he has to tank the spot that he's currently standing in. This was still the case in 64, but the mobility was lower across the board, making this a bit of a non-issue. All of these factors combined clearly nerf the attack, both directly and indirectly, and can be expanded to basically every attack in his kit. Dare gets significantly weak without Z cancels to give it advantage on block, and thanks to Up Tilt's relationship to it, it also impacts the rest of the chain. Fair started working at half of the active frames with less reliable results. A loss in functionality so severe it might as well be called Boris, Liz and Rishi. Up air... No, it's pretty good actually. Hard to use, but hey, it's something. Almost every single aspect of his kit is now worse, on an individual level that goes on to impact the cohesion of the entire kit, and directly lessens the effectiveness of a walling character who benefits from a lethal punish game. However, Kirby being nerfed in a literal sense is not the biggest problem. In reality, it's a small slice of the problem pie that is again covered in salmonella. The real issue for Kirby is the entire system tray that the character is baked in. 64 as a game almost seems tailored to Kirby and how unique it is by the standards of Smash. That emerges most obviously in what was absent from future games that would make the series feel less oppressive than a lot of traditional fighters. DI, for example, is in 64, but only as what people would know in other Smash games as Smash DI, where the initial hit can be nudged slightly, making Kirby's combo routes much more reliable than they would be in future entries. Hit stun and block stun, while overstated in its length a little, could still pretty comfortably put 6 foot in the Tinder bio and get away with it. Movement, again, is very deliberate. It's not sourceless, but pivot up tilt is ketchup. Melee's got barbecue sauce and flavors that turn this into a whole new meal. Melee also has substantially lower hit stun and block stun, along with the movement that created the butterfly effect, letting these 4 boys make 6 figures a month. But not me, I'm here for the love of the game and £100 a month. Money now! You might consider this a shameless self-promotion, but it's either plugging this or snake oil VPN. If you'd let me boil down the nuance to make for a half-true bullet point, 64's system enhanced characters who can maximize the value out of smaller openings, while Melee's system enhanced characters who can move themselves in a way that lets them repeat interactions at advantage. Kirby in 64 benefits from the systems with easy to access combo starters that feed into a game plan that keeps up a strong defense. It's not hard for other characters to combo Kirby, but it's thanks to his huge stage presence that it's hard to find the first hit without trading. It's also not that he's approaching better than other characters. His aerial drift will always keep him locked to the same general area, it's that he's able to capitalize on holding down the fort with his large hitboxes more effectively than most characters. From there, the consistent combo routes let the character move the opponent off stage reliably, letting him take stocks while not having his weaknesses open to exploit. When that evolved character gets brought over to Melee, that weakness in his aerial drift is amplified. Even if he had the same hitboxes as 64, that wouldn't help him all too much. His mobility wouldn't let him keep up with characters in a faster metagame. But even if he could catch you, what was he supposed to do exactly? The new DI system that also impacts crouch cancelling, along with lower hit stun, means that he's unlikely to move you off stage, rarely letting Kirby get a big reward, but also meaning that he has to play more neutral, which he's now substantially worse at doing. Kirby's lack of aerial mobility, along with direct nerfs, nullify the strengths of old and unravel the weaknesses bare. You can even see parts of Melee Kirby's flaws in 64. Look at Isaiah vs Super Boomfan at Super Smash Con. For about 5 whole minutes, it's Kirby attempting to control the stage while Pikachu controls the platforms. Because of Kirby's open access to combo starters, Pikachu is disincentivized to approach, but Kirby's lack of ability to move horizontally while in the air means that his approach can't force Pikachu out of position. The weaknesses still exist in 64, it's just not as strongly present. So in Melee, the character has to lean on something else. But what else is there? One of the hardest parts about playing a low tier is the fact that you can't find a game. If you're going to insult me with your dog shit Falco, I'd at least hope that you have the courtesy to humor my subpar Kirby. Since people aren't taking you seriously, and the people that are probably aren't going more than 1 and 2 in tournament, it can be hard to get an accurate read on where your character gets a lot of mileage. Effective tools on the unranked shitter aren't really representative if your opponent's a devout follower of our Lord and Savior, Grey Stick Down. She mashed Yellow Stick for our sins, you know. Thankfully, no matter how many words of wisdom you put in front of someone, there's always someone who just doesn't care. Just a little treat. Triple R vs Frenzy at Big House 6 is a match that isn't representative of either player's skill level anymore, but when you're looking for Kirby footage, beggars can't be choosers. One of the first things that you'll notice is that defensive walling Kirby, he's not exactly present here. There's the odd spot here and there where it looks like it's 1999, but for the most part, Triple R is approaching a lot. That might seem natural to avoid getting locked down by the laser, but if you look at Inkafest 2019, when Nax is playing Kirby and Isaiah is playing Fox who has a hit stun laser, there's still a lot of holding control of platforms and preemptive play from Kirby, compared to how Triple R is forced to try and get things started. The way they attempt that is with approaching fair, covering side platforms and his landing with a hitbox, but it doesn't lead to much. At best you're getting a tech chase off of it, which if you end up comboing high you can't actually follow, but just as likely you're going to get a stray hit into nothing. Wow. When using this move defensively, you run into a lot of the same issues, either resetting to disadvantage or getting nothing for your effort. Except with approaching fair, if it hits low, you might be lucky enough for a tech chase you can follow up on. Keyword there being might. A lot of the time though, when Triple R throws out a fair, Frenzy backdashes just a little, and likely due to a little bit of matchup unfamiliarity, Triple R goes unpunished a lot. This leads to part 2 of the strat, roll like you're on fire. There's a lot of roll up tilt in this set from Kirby, and while maybe the roll seems a little unnecessary, it might be one of the better ways for Kirby to get to one of his best tools. Kirby doesn't have the greatest movement on the ground, but still wants to get to one of his buttons that are big, combos at low percent, and is one of the more reliable ways to set up for offstage situations. All of the positive qualities that are mirrored in its low poly version. However, just because it's good, doesn't mean it's good enough to form a whole game plan around. If it's used too much, then it's a great move to bait out, because you know that the Kirby isn't going to suddenly be in a different space after it, or have a shine behind it if the punish is sloppy. This ends up encouraging Kirbys to use the move in more aggressive positions, not only relative to 64 Kirby, who will mostly use it mid-combo and to extend pressure, but even relative to characters in Melee who have top tier up tilts. Outside of that, there's not really a lot that Triple R can use to push their advantage, which might be why, even though Game 1 was close, as Frenzy adapts in Game 2, he kinda puts Triple R in the blender. Fucks him up so hard that R23's popping off, and calm down Alex, it's pools. It's not that Triple R is playing substantially worse, it's that in Game 2, where Frenzy plays substantially better, the tools that Triple R is getting advantage off of are exploited more for the own goal that they are. And really, what can Triple R do here but their best Jamie Pollock impression? Between 64 and Melee, Kirby seemingly got kicked in the teeth, and he was, but he also became a fish out of water. The systems that benefited the character got warped, not intentionally to drown a top tier, but because that's what the sequel was going to be. It was going to be a little faster, with things a little less certain. It was going to be a place where Kirby, a character who benefited from the world they existed in, would be mechanically taxed to death. It's like the worst nightmare of a billionaire. It just goes to show that our little games can be a bit weird. What works in one game doesn't always align itself with the next. And if you're unfortunate enough to never get a patch, your character might be perpetually sitting comfy at the top, or never even have a shot at cracking the honorable mentions of a PR. Thanks for watching, like, subscribe, all the usual stuff, but also, I'd like to thank Jam, also known as Poppin' Jam on Twitch and Twitter, for going over 64 Kirby with me and making sure that I wasn't talking out my ass too much for the script. Alright, that's all I wanted to, I just wanted to, thank you Jam, love you, wow, bye!